Hopefully you can see my screen. Is the screen visible now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it is visible.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to talk about writing a killer speech. Now, what do I mean by a killer speech? I'm talking about a speech that is effective, a speech that is beautiful and elegant, a speech that is memorable. Obviously, there are a lot of components that are involved in such a speech, and a lot of them have to do with the presentation as well as the content itself. But what about the mechanics of writing a speech? In my opinion, the most important thing, the first aspect of a successful speech is choosing a good topic and then writing a great speech. And that's what we're going to talk about as part of this first session in the series of, five sessions that we're going to do. Great. So let me move on. I want to specify that let's use a laptop if that's possible. I would like all the microphones to be muted. So if anybody needs anything, you can share your comments in the chat window. And if you are facing difficulty with your connections, you can disable your video. There'll be some writing that we will actually need to do, as I said. So if it's possible, you can actually write on your laptop. If not, yes, you can use a pen and paper to do that as well. The reason I'm asking you to write on your laptop is that you can edit. It'll be easier for you to edit your writing. Okay, so Sachin has already done the introduction, but this is me in a nutshell. I've tried to blow it up as much as possible. These are a couple of the awards that I've won. I've actually won a couple of international awards for writing from an organization called the Society for Technical Communication. So this was part of a competition that was held in around 2012, where I submitted a document that I had written. It was a technical manual, and it won at the local level in New York and also as part of the global competition. So that's where my writing credentials come from. I've been writing for a long while. I've done quite a fair bit of writing. And thanks to that, I've imbibed some of the principles that are involved in good writing. And this is what I would love to share with you guys here now. Okay. Some of you may have already seen this, but I'm sure a lot of you haven't. I want to tell you a story. Several years ago, there was an author, Nora Hayden, who wrote a book. And on the left-hand side, you can see the cover of the book that she wrote. She designed this cover and she published it. And the book was not a success. In fact, she considered it to be a failure. And after about a year, she sold the publishing rights to a professional publisher who redesigned only the cover of the book. Just the cover and nothing else, mind you. Every word of the book inside was exactly the same. I want you to hazard a guess now, and in the chat window, I want you to type out what you think the sales figures were for the book on the left and for the book on the right. Those of you who are already familiar with the answers, I would like you to refrain from typing those comments. For some reason, I cannot see the chat window again. Yeah, there. Okay. 1:10. Okay. So no, I'm asking for actual numbers. Like how many copies you think were sold? The book on the left sold, and the exact same book with a different cover. How many copies you think were sold by the book on the right? So I want numbers. Sir, 1 billion is a very, very large number. Yeah. So I want you to tell me left and right, right? So if you say 50 million, what? Yes. Akhilesh has said left 1,000. Then what is the the book on the right is what? 10K, 10 million. Okay. So you think Samit feels the book on the left is 10K and the book on the right is 10 million. Okay. Any other? Prasanna says 50 million on the right. What about the left? What do you think about book on the right 15 million? Okay. DTM Usha. Any other differing thoughts? Anyone feels that the book on the left sold more copies than the book on the right? Tejas says 1,015 million. Okay. Yeah, so you guys have got the general idea. So intuitively you understand the principle of good writing, right? 150 and 25 million. Okay, excellent. So let me put the number here. These are the actual numbers. This is a while back again, of course. So the book on the left sold 5,000, less than 5,000 copies, and that's why the author was dejected, and she sold the book to a publisher, and simply by changing the cover, it sold more than 2.3 million copies. 2.3 million. Where is 5,000 and 2.3 million? That is a multiple orders of magnitude larger. So what does that tell us? What's the lesson here? I think, are we a cozy enough audience that we can talk here? I don't know. I'm just.
I think everything is in the title of the speech or the title of the book.
Agreed. Agreed.
Everything I think we'd better talk. Chatting doesn't make it.
Yeah. So that's fine. Yeah, chatting is good for large audiences. We can talk. Yeah. So yeah. Any other thoughts here? Like what are the lessons we learn from this?
Choice of words.
Absolutely. Choice of words matter. But why does it matter? Like, what's the difference between these two? Let's dig a little deeper. What is so wrong about astrological love? Whatever that means.
Very simple.
We can't make out head or tail of what she's trying to say.
Exactly. What is astrological? What does it mean?
As astronomy and logical and all that.
Yes, and so correct. It absolutely makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
And here on the right, it's a very, very clear. The ask is very simple. Sorry, the title tells you very clearly, right? Mm-hmm. How to satisfy a woman every time, and the every time is underlined. That's, I think, every man's dream. Let me put it that way. Like, I think Freud, said that this thing, right? I have no idea what it takes to satisfy a woman. In the sense, so the father of modern psychology was not sure how to satisfy a woman, So this title kind of deals with that human need here. And what does this have to do with speech writing? I'd like some of you to hazard a guess. So okay, fine. This is a book title, but what has this got to do with speeches?
You should have a good title.
A catchy title is most important.
A catchy title is important. Yes, absolutely. What else? Any other thoughts?
It's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Exactly. Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head. So this was just a simple example of how important it is to craft your communication. Like crafting your communication. So the more important your speech, and when I say speech here, I'm not just talking about you're standing on a stage or a podium and delivering to a large audience. Some of the most important speeches you deliver might be to your interviewer while you're looking for a new job, right? My point again is that whatever you need to say, how it is to be said is as important as the what. And that's what we're going to talk about here. So I'm going to talk today about how to write a good speech, how to craft a good speech. I don't claim to be
Harold, I have a question.
Sure, ma'am. Yeah.
The cover of the book was changed.
Right.
But do you think readers would have been upset or disappointed when whatever was written inside was not what they wanted?
No, but the irony is that it actually was what they wanted. So the tragedy here was that the author had in fact written a fantastic book.
Okay.
Which is why it sold 2.3 million. So you can't, the first 10,000 people who buy it, if they find that it's just clickbait and the content is no good, the reviews they would leave on Amazon and all those tools would definitely, it will collapse the book. There's no doubt about it.
So do you think that the cover, the book on the left, because of the cover didn't sell more than 5,000?
Yes. It is only because of the cover. So whether you like it or not, people are judging. There is a saying, don't judge a book by its cover. But human beings are still, compelled by our internal logic or our internal systems. So, coming back again, what matters is not just what you have to say, but how you want to say it. So the first step of saying something is writing the speech here, right? In terms of a speech writing, which is what we're going to talk about, what we're going to deal with here. So, what are some of the qualities of good writing? In my opinion, these three are the most important aspects of any kind of good writing. You know, whether it's a speech or it's an email you want to write, you want to persuade, you want to accomplish some aim, right? Every
Harold,
communication.
there is some disturbance somewhere. There is some sound coming from somewhere.
Just a
Yeah,
moment.
can someone please stop typing, because I just unmuted 2-3 persons from the meeting. Please do that.
Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, now it's stopped. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Coming back, in my opinion, the qualities of good writing, it begins with effectiveness. If your piece of communication, whether it's you're writing a speech or an email or an article or a blog post, if it does not meet the objectives, and we'll come to that objective, then in my opinion, you cannot call that good writing. So whatever objective you have, your speech needs to meet that objective. Oh yeah, in fact, in my place also, it's raining, and there's a sound of heavy rain hammering away on my.
Okay.
I'm
That's
so
fine.
sorry.
That's fine then.
There's probably no way for me to eliminate that. Unless
Okay,
I
that's
move.
fine. That's fine.
You should have the power to stop the rain.
I think depending on how much water we need, that might not be a great thing. Okay, so if it's really bad, I can move locations if you don't mind.
But the rain is falling all around you, right?
Right.
Wherever you go, the sound is
It's
going to
likely
come.
to be the same. Okay, fine. So let's come back to this. In my opinion, the next most important aspect of good writing is clarity and communication. Comprehension. What do I mean by clarity? That your writing is very clear, it's unambiguous. And comprehension, that is the person who's reading it understands what is being said. Right? And then comes elegance and beauty. Like once you have effective writing and you're writing that is clear and can be comprehended easily, then the aspect of elegance and beauty comes into play. In truth, all these three are interconnected. I have just separated them for some, because our PowerPoints are linear, but reality is not linear. It is non-linear. So effectiveness, clarity and comprehension, elegance and beauty. These are the three qualities of good writing. Now, okay, choose one or two niche topics. Okay. The first challenge I believe that is faced by most folks is when I want to write is what should be the topic of my speech? What should I write my speech on? What should I write my speech on? What should I deliver a speech on? What kind of topic should I choose? So, given that this is a challenge, my opinion and my suggestion here is start by choosing one or two niche areas in which you have some expertise. Choose topics that connect, so topics with emotion that are human interest, of interest to your audience. Choose those topics. Brainstorm, ideate, and look within. That means you do some brainstorming, talk to some of your colleagues, look within and see what kind of topic appeals to you, and use that topic to craft your speech. And finally, do research, like go to different sites and go to different websites, read up on different books, use Google autocomplete and search basically for topics based on your current niche areas here. So as a simple exercise, either in the chat box or in your notebooks, I would like you to actually select both the niche and a set of topics that will be relevant, that you feel are relevant, or that is going to be the topic of your next speech. So let's do this as an exercise now. Write down a couple of topics with those titles and put them in the chat window. Based on this, what is your niche? Whether the topic has basically human connection, human emotion, story of human interest. Then look within and figure out whether there's something that comes up to you. And you can even do a little bit of research on Google and come up with a few topics that you can use. At least one topic so that we can use that as part of the rest of our exercise. Okay. Yeah, DT Musha says life skills, social media, importance of yoga, Amit Singh. Kevin Fernandes says baby boomer too. Okay, that's interesting. I would love to. What are the topics? Please type them in your chat window. What is going to be the topic? Darkness versus light. Excellent. The leader in you. Any other thoughts? Type them in. Think about the lessons we learned the hard way. Oh, fantastic. What else? Look within. The Corona experience. When will this pandemic end? Awesome. How to achieve success without anybody's help. Very nice one, Pulkit. Lessons from failure. Asim says emotional intelligence during pandemic. I agree. Quickly, just a minute more. Think about any other topics. The learning cycle. Life beyond COVID-19. How to stay single. Online teaching. Okay, excellent. Great. So, anyone here have a challenge with selecting a topic, choosing a topic, or coming up with a topic? I know that, yeah. So Akhilesh has raised his hand. Any others who have, who have the challenge? You can unmute yourself and just come up. Work from home. Sonia says that she has a challenge. Okay, excellent. So can you talk a little bit about what kind of challenge you're facing with the topic?
Can I start?
Yes, go ahead, Akhilesh.
Actually, so many things is coming in my mind, but I'm not able to connect the dots. Sometimes some topic comes, sometimes some topic comes. So I'm thinking which topic is suitable for me. Sometimes I think, okay, I'll speak in this topic, I'll write in this topic. Or sometimes I think I'll write in this topic, but I'm not still that, yeah, this will be the best topic for me.
Sure. So in that case, my suggestion is that, instead of looking for one topic that looks like it is the best, but you have a whole bunch of topics and you sleep on it a while, wait for a day or so, and then figure out the next day which one appeals to you. Yeah, everyone has different techniques when it comes to choosing topics, but you can use this method. You write, brainstorm, allow things to come up, and then you use that you incubate it for a while, for a couple of days, and then after a few days, whatever, you take a look at your list, and whatever looks interesting, you kind of say, okay, this is the one for me. Great. Moving on. So every speech, before you begin, obviously first you need a topic. But once you have your topic, then you need to take a few more steps. You need to do this. You need to identify the audience, the intention or the intent as it is called, the tone, and then obviously you have to have the content. And we'll come to the content part of it. But the first step is the audience. Who is the audience? Who is going to listen to my speech? Who is going to read my piece of content? That's the first step that you need to do. You need to identify the audience. Next, you need to identify the intention. Okay, I know. So let me give you an example. My audience may be IT professionals who have got between 5 to 15 years of experience. Okay, that's a very clear, well-defined demographic located in India. Right? That's my audience. But now, what is my intention? What do I want to communicate to this audience? Like in my case, I might want to talk about work-life balance. So I want to clearly help my audience to achieve work-life balance, just to give an example, right? And then what is the tone I want to use in my speech? Do I want to deliver a serious speech? Do I want to deliver a joyful speech? Do I want it to be humorous, or do I want it to be sad? Do I want people to laugh or sad? Of course, in this case, sad is probably a little over the top. Will my tone be formal or informal? Do I want to talk to them in a professional manner, or do I want to talk to them in a friendly manner? That is, the formal or informal. Do I want to, should my tone be optimistic or pessimistic? Am I talking about this topic as a huge challenge to which nobody has a solution? Or am I saying, yeah, we do know that it's a challenge, but I am positive that there is a solution, and here's the solution that I'm proposing, right? So now, for your speech, the title that you just decided, I want you to identify an audience. I know that this is in the air, but I would still like you to do this exercise. Identify the audience, identify your intention, and then figure out what the tone might be. You can do that, and I want you to again, type it into the chat window so that everyone can see. So this is more like something that gives us an idea of how to operate, right?
Based on the topic that we just mentioned in the
Yes,
chat.
the topic that you just mentioned in the chat.
Okay.
Identify the audience, the intention or intent as it is called, and the tone. So this is an example, right? Okay. Pulkit says team members joyful. What's the intention? What's the intention of your, what are you trying to communicate? What are you trying to achieve there with your article? I would like you to specify the intention as well. So DTM Usha says life skills, topic is, audience is general. Okay. Whole world, intention is spread positivity, tone is optimistic. Darkness to light, expand the audience, give them hope, give them a fresh, insightful perspective. Intention is to motivate, urge. Okay. Now, I would like you to, I can see that, quite a few have said the audience is general. It's the whole world. This is something that perhaps one can look at. Often, of course, articles need to be addressed to the whole world, but the more specific your audience, the more likely you are to write a more effective speech. So try to use the option world, everyone as the last choice, right? So try to keep that as, so for example, in this article, New Year's resolution, right? Living consciously. Now again, the audience could be the whole world, I agree. But the fact is that in my mind, actually the audience is the folks who are interested in living consciously. So that is important. Try to drill down. I would like you to take a look at what you've selected as an audience and try to drill down further. Make a conscious decision to narrow it down further. Typically our audience is Toastmasters. I get that. But even within Toastmasters, it is a form. There are usually specific subsets that we're looking for, right? So that is something that you can attempt here. Yes, Taha, go on.
Yes, actually, it's a very good point, and I just feel that perhaps I can interrupt because, see, I mean, in the e-learning industry also, they tell us to create a caricature, even if it's a mental caricature. That helps because it helps you identify, oh, this is how my typical audience member looks like. For example, I mean, my typical audience member would be somebody, a corporate employee. So even if I have a mental image of him or her, and a physical image always helps. If I can paste it, let's say, on my desk, that helps. I mean, that helps tremendously. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the word though you're looking for is not caricature, but persona. Caricature is a funny, sarcastic, or humorous persona. So you obviously don't want to be sarcastic or downplay or exaggerate the oddities in your persona, but you want to have a holistic
Yeah,
persona.
persona also is.
Okay, good. So now that we're done, we've done this, right? We've gone through this. So what are the typically the different intents for speeches? So in short, what kinds of speeches can we have when it comes to the intention? You can break down your speech, you can categorize your speech in one or perhaps more of these four categories. You may be aiming to inspire your audience. You might be looking to educate them or inform them about something. You might want to entertain them. And finally, you might want to convince them. You might have some ask or you want to sell something. And mind you, often we are not aware of the intent of our speech from this perspective. Like, I think most folks, for example, don't realize that if they realize that in an interview, at some level, the interviewee, you as the interviewee, are selling your capabilities and your services. You are trying to convince the interviewer, you're trying to do your best, obviously, to convince the interviewer that you're a good fit. But even in terms of appraisal, I've noticed that there is a lot of gap here, when it comes to this ask or sell. There is another aspect where we often feel that selling is somehow something negative, or I think sales has some negative connotations associated with this. So we are often not sure that we fall into this fourth bracket, this fourth bucket, which is to convince someone. But in my opinion, it is as important, if not more, than the other three that are listed out here. We are always trying to convince someone of something at some level, right? Even inspiration is a form of attempting to convince someone to adopt either a lifestyle or a new way of thinking or a new way of doing something. But understanding which of these four categories works for your speech, and it may be more than one. As I said, you may want to educate with the intent to convince, right? You may want to entertain with the intent to inspire. You can choose more than one. So again, for the topic that you chose, and for the the intent audience, etc., that you've identified now, the high level attributes you've identified, I want you to specify which of these four categories your speech comes under. Again, just type it into the chat window so that we have some clarity. Is your speech a speech meant to inspire, to educate or inform, to entertain, or to convince? Okay, for some reason I can't. Oh, it's really raining hard. The timing is amazing.
We've lost. We are having a power cut also, Harold.
Yeah, same. Even I had a power cut starting from 4. It just came back about an hour ago. 4 night, 3:30. So I thought, okay, today session was looking dicey. Inspire, educate. Okay, awesome. Yeah, often it could fall into this category. Great. Anyone have any thoughts about these categories and wondering whether any of them, like whether your speech falls into or in some ambiguous or gray area?
I think from a speech there's like purpose, right? The main purpose, as you said, and there can be a secondary purpose.
Right.
For my main purpose can be to educate and inform, but I can also have a call of action, and that action that I'm asking people to take, I need to inspire people to take that action. So that is a secondary objective.
True.
But the primary objective always is to educate and inform. So
agreed. Yeah.
We can always put speeches in various categories by the way we see it. Look at a speech.
True.
For me, it might be educate, but for the audience, it might inspire them. So.
Yes, that is true. However, the key thing here is to have the clarity of what am I attempting here. What's my objective from that perspective. Great. Thanks, Govinda. Okay, so now we come, one second, before we come to what are the parts, what's the structure of a speech? What are the parts of a speech? This, I know, I'm sure that most of you are already aware of the parts of a speech. You have a speech title, you have an introduction, you have a body and a conclusion. And that's it as far as the speech is concerned, which is amazingly simple. But that alone is not sufficient. And we will drill down deeper into each of these aspects. But now, if I were to ask you to think about a speech title, then you have to understand what the intent was, right? So when you're crafting your speech, you're breaking down or writing down your speech in some kind of structure, you need to have clarity on what was the intention, what's the audience, and that's why it matters, because the way you write your speech is determined by what you've decided is the intention for what is the intent for your speech, who's the audience, and what you're attempting to achieve here. Typically, the introduction and conclusion are really relatively small. That means that they may constitute 10 to 20% of your speech, and your body will constitute 80% of your speech. Yet in terms of actual importance and impact, the title, the introduction, and the conclusion matter immensely. And why does it matter immensely? Anyone want to hazard a guess here? Why is an introduction important? Why is the title important? Why is the conclusion important? As compared to the body.
Even before the, Harold, this is Samit here. Even before the speech, people should be curious enough to know about your speech. That's the title. And in first 30 seconds, people will decide in their mind, like whether they're going to listen to us or not.
True.
So that's why introduction is important. And with some objective we have spoken, right? And we want them to take some action or go with that objective, right? So that's why conclusion is important.
Absolutely, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, Samit. Anyone have anything to add or any thoughts, anything additional you want to?
So the book analogy that you gave in the beginning of this meeting,
right?
So that's on the title bit, that the title should be eye-catching. It should gauge the attention of the audience, and of course the introduction, because people, when attending for a speech, being the audience, they definitely look forward to what's in it for them. So that's why I think both those 2 pointers will be a great initiator while preparing and writing and delivering this speech.
Absolutely, that's a really good one. Priyanka, that's Priyanka, right?
It's Priyansha here.
Priyansha. Sorry, that's a good point you made, Priyansha. So what happens is that once you're standing in front of your audience, whether virtually through a laptop or in practice on the stage, the audience is making, they're judging you at some level. They're evaluating you and trying to understand at some level or analyze and come up to the conclusion, are you a good speaker or not? And there is a very, very important aspect here where the impression that your audience carries away is largely determined, surprisingly largely determined by the introduction. Once they're already in front of your audience, the introduction as well as the conclusion. So the strange thing is, if you have a highly impactful introduction, obviously you've already hooked your audience, they are paying attention to your speech. That probably has the biggest impact as far as the impression that the audience carries about whether you're a good speaker or not. So paying attention, in order of the attention you need to pay for your title, your introduction, as well as your conclusion, I would say that, especially since it's a speech, your introduction and conclusion deserve really maybe 20 to 30% or even 40% of the effort required to polish, write, rewrite, change, modify, so that they are effective. I'm not downplaying the importance of your body, but I'm suggesting that the introduction and the conclusion play a huge role in the way the audience perceives you as far as being a great speaker is concerned. So what is required to create a good introduction? For starters, don't just repeat the title. say something that is unusual, grab the attention of your audience. Right? So how do you grab the attention of your audience? To grab the attention of your audience, you play the oldest trick in the book, which is you leave some information out, you plug into your audience's curiosity. So you are actually plugging into some emotion that your audience is experiencing at some level, right? So you ask a question that evokes some kind of curiosity, right? So for example, if you ask the question, what is the most important aspect of a person's life? Sorry, let me rephrase that. What do people who are on their deathbed consider to be most important aspects of their lives? So if I ask you this question, what response does it evoke in you? What do you feel? Let me repeat the question. What do people who are on their deathbed consider to be the most important aspects of their lives? Like, this is a question I'm posing now.
Family and reading. They wish they should have spent more time with their family and they should have more well read.
Agreed. So you're evoking a question. No, but my question was, what are you plugging into? Means, why does this question appeal to your audience at some level? Why do questions appeal to the audience in general? And by the way, I'm asking a question again.
It generates curiosity.
Emotion.
It generates curiosity. It plugs into some emotion.
To engage the audience.
You are engaging the audience. You're trying to hook into a question that is already there in the mind of your audience. So if you ask the question that people are already thinking of, you will straight away plug into their interest. They'll immediately be interested in it, right? So this is an example of what I call a hook. Ask a question, talk about a short story, and don't give the conclusion. Start with a crazy statistic or a fun fact. Address the reader's concern, which is, of course, plugs into the ask a question. You have an option to use a quote. You also have an option to set the scene, which is, again, set the scene is kind of connected with the story idea. But if you notice this, the one that I prefer the least is the quote. I know a lot of speeches start with a quote, but unless the quote is something really mind-blowing, it's going to be very difficult for you to hook the audience's attention. Right? Your quote really has to, like, if you give a quote of a famous writer to a class of students who are learning to write or want to learn to write, that might work. But for a general audience, if you start with a quote, probably not a great thing, because it may or may not hook your audience. Asking a question, giving a short story, starting with a crazy statistic or a fun fact, or addressing your reader's concern are probably way more effective than starting a quote, right? The reason I bring this up is I know that there is a lot of our speeches start with a quote, but I am thinking to the contrary here and saying, you may end with a quote, or you may weave a quote in the middle in your body, but don't begin with a quote unless you have no other choice. Any thoughts here? Any questions before I move on?
Harold, asking a question, I think you're losing, you're putting your audience to answer, you're losing out on time. I thought, raise your hands, how many of you have seen this movie? So
yes.
That is, and there'll be one or two takers, or there might be a silence, and suddenly you've lost the whole plot. I wouldn't like to start with a question.
Okay. But even if people don't, like, you may ask a question which is a rhetorical in the sense that you're not expecting an answer. What I'm suggesting here is you provoke thought. You have a crazy thought-provoking question that is instantly something that is already in the mind of your audience. And this is where asking a question to a general audience is way more difficult than asking a question to a specific audience. But in my opinion, I've seen that asking questions makes a huge difference. Yeah? Depending on whether it's the right question that you're asking. What is the right question is, of course, subject to debate, and it's something that one needs to work on. Anything else before I move on?
Story is fine.
Right.
Starting with a story and then trying to relate what you're trying to say with the story.
Agreed. A story, yeah. Stories again, human. Again, it's a direct human appeal, right? We have been listening to stories and we were fascinated by stories for as long as we could remember, I'm sure.
Actually, in this online sessions, to ask the question and just ask to unmute someone, as it is said already here, somebody has said that it is a time consuming. At the same time, it doesn't have any impactful start. Only because of online session. In physical meetings, definitely it is impactful.
So, okay, what was your opinion about the question I asked here? I did ask a question, right? Did you think this had impact? I'm asking.
Yeah, definitely because of title, as you have already mentioned about.
The point I'm trying to make is if you have the right question, you can make a huge impact, right? So anyway, this is something that you need to try out. Perhaps we can discuss more about this in detail. Yes, DTM.
I'm telling only online. Yeah, online. Yeah.
If your speech is a story,
right,
then how do you start?
You can again ask a question. So okay, let me give an example. The same thing that I mentioned here. What do you think that 90% of the folks who are on their deathbed consider the most important aspect of their lives? And then you're asking this question. It might be a rhetorical question. Maybe you're not expecting the audience to answer, but maybe you get an answer. And then you start this.
Kevin said you'll be wasting time because of the multiple answers that you'll get.
Not really. I think you can
have a point. I have a point, Harold. So,
yes,
in the way process of answering that question, and in the question answer, we make the topic relevant for the audience.
Yes,
okay?
that. Yeah.
So that context we set up right in the beginning. Why what I'm going to do or say is important for you.
If you watch a lot of TED Talks, you will notice that many of them begin with a question. And I would urge you to take a look at some of the TED Talks. So I understand the concern now here, because as Toastmasters, our time is 7 minutes.
Yes.
And we are concerned.
That is the problem.
In a very deadly way.
Yeah.
But often when you go outside the format, yes, Kevin, I get that. So often when you go outside this format and you address like a real world scenario, like this webinar, right? It's you have all invested 1.5 hours of time in this session. So at that time, it is actually pertinent, or it's possible to ask the right kind of question, is what I'm saying. Even if it's a story, even if you're starting with a story, you can ask this question. So let me ask another question. Do you believe that it is possible for any human being to run non-stop for 60 hours continuously? This is a question I'm asking you now. What do you think? Is it possible for a human being to run non-stop for 60 hours continuously?
Most of us would say no, and therefore, how many would say yes?
Agreed. So now let me tell you a story about a person who did exactly that. And then I will start with the story of a guy who ran 800 miles in 6 days, non-stop. He did not stop to sleep. He did not, of course, he drank water and all that. And he was 70 years old when he did this. So that's the story, and that's the plot. So I'm sorry, I'm just addressing DTM Usha's question of how can one ask a question and then lead to a story. This is how, right?
So I have a point over here.
Yes.
On this, whether starting with a question.
Right.
So is it very important that if we ask for a question, then we should wait for others' answers?
Not necessarily.
Not necessary. That's what my point is, that if we are asking a question, suppose in the TED Talks, which we have I have watched so many, they ask a question, but then they don't wait for the answers. They just raise that curiosity in the mind of the people by putting that question, and they start with their speech.
Agreed.
So that's what the role of asking a question is. It's not always necessary that we should wait for their answers and invest our time in waiting for their replies.
Agreed. You're right. So it's a function of time, in effect. Yeah. So either in TED or in Toastmasters, we are limited. Even TED there's actually a statistic which says that 14 or 15 minutes is the ideal time the most popular TED Talks are in that range. So in Toastmasters, it's a good thing that we have this time limit, which is like a 7-minute limit. And incidentally, 7 minutes is also what YouTube does, right? If you put something more than all the million plus view videos are all in the 5 to 7 minute bracket. That seems to be kind of some kind of limit on the current human interest, which is here. Okay.
Once interest lasts only for about 20 minutes max.
That is true, but that is probably the statistic from the reader time when people were reading. I think today it's highly likely that it's lower than that.
Yeah, it is lower than that. So any time you talk more than that, people are switched off.
Agreed. So yeah, so it's a good point there, like how to deal with asking a question. Okay, moving on. Creating a good conclusion, right? What are the facets? What are the aspects of creating a good conclusion? So I want to draw the analogy of a movie director, right? If you think about it, all movies are in effect about the conclusion at some level. You sit for 1.5 hours or 90 minutes or you sit for 80 minutes to see that last 10 minutes in effect. That's the whole, so that's the journey. And a great movie director actually takes you by the hand and keeps you hooked both visually or from the auditory perspective. So writing a good conclusion is often about thinking like a movie director, thinking of the climax, thinking about what you are going to end with. So studying movies, understanding what is required to make it a great climax is in my opinion, a great way to think about creating a good conclusion. And from the mechanics perspective, like the how, these are some of the things that have worked. Provide a summary just for from the perspective of the interest. But in my opinion, a lot of the how is inspire action, ask for something, leave them thinking, and then perhaps provide a summary. So you want to, if you have a inspirational speech or an educational speech, you might want to either inspire action or leave them thinking. If you have a persuasive speech, you might want to ask for something. Right? If you have a humorous speech, then the objective is to probably make people laugh. So you want to entertain them. If they are entertained and hooked, that's sufficient. So there may be no specific ask when it comes to the entertainment part of speech. But if for the other three aspects, you need to look at how to inspire action, how to ask for something, how to leave them thinking. Are there any other ideas that you have or that you've used for great conclusions that you have seen?
Moral of the story.
Agreed.
A take-home message.
Right. That is leave them thinking bracket. Like leave them thinking about something. And interestingly enough, when you spoke about moral of the story, I think now more than ever, because of the volume of content, Kevin, it is better for it to be implicit than explicit. Yeah. Which is why I specified it as leave them thinking. Allow your audience to arrive at that moral as an implicit. Of course, you're free to state it, but in my opinion, leaving them thinking is a more effective strategy.
Well, it depends on the audience. If it's a mixed group and there are some people who need explicit explanation, then I suppose you're missing out on that. They would think it was just a stand-up comedian.
Right.
That sort of a thing.
Yeah. In which case, yeah, provide a summary. You say something explicitly. But if you want to, the summary is probably lower impact in terms of a great conclusion than numbers 1, 2, and 3, where you are either inspiring some action. You have a clear ask of the audience. You're asking them to do something, perhaps, or you leave them thinking. That is purely in terms of impact. Okay, moving on. I want you to do this exercise, and this is a crazy exercise, something called free writing. Now, free writing is about the body of your speech. Right? Typically, the challenge that we are often facing is, what should I write? How do I write something? How do I put the content? How do I allow whatever inside me to come out on paper, right? Effectively, or metaphorically on paper. So I want you to do this exercise for 5 minutes. Based on the topic you just chose, write whatever is on your mind. It can be totally random, whatever's coming to your head on that topic, by the way, not on anything else, but do it non-stop. Let it flow. Don't edit, don't fix spelling mistakes, don't make changes. Don't allow your inner judge to sabotage your writing process. So I'd really like you to attempt this free writing exercise right now on your notepad, or on your, you can open a word processing editor, or you can write it on a piece of paper on the topic you just chose. 5 minutes. Okay, 2 more minutes before we take a look at some of the free writing stuff. Okay, great. So you can stop writing now. I'd like you to, type out in your chat window how many words you wrote, right? Typically how much, approximately using a free writing exercise, how much did you write now? Approximately how many words? You can even paste your content into the chat window just so that we can take a look. Okay, cool. About 100 words, yeah. Thanks, Govinda. Pulkit. Nice, very nice. So what, yeah, once you're typing in, yeah, 90, 100 words, 150. So the irony is that in a very, very short time, you can actually write a lot. Typically, there is a lot of hesitation when it comes to speech writing because the idea is that, it takes a lot of time, and it does take time to write a great speech. If you're giving a TED talk, then, this is just the first step in many, many steps. But if you are writing a speech that you want to deliver at your office or at your local Toastmasters club, then it's really interesting to see that it need not take a lot of time. It absolutely need not take a lot of time. You can, by using this concept of free writing, you can absolutely come up with a lot of insights, a lot of content, a lot of ideas in less than 5 minutes by simply allowing your inner self to deliver without any editing. Kevin, Kevin has written, I believe, 300 words. Fantastic. So typically your speech would be 7-minute speech would be between 600 to 800 words, depending on, the speed at which you deliver. So you obviously would want to write more than that and come down. And that is something that I will come to. But use free writing whenever you feel stuck or you're not sure what to write. Allow whatever is in your mind, allow it to flow. Don't judge, don't even stop to fix spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, nothing. That's all something that is going to come later. So use free writing as a tool to allow your creative juices to really flow. Yeah. How many of you have a challenge when it comes to actually writing content like this, like writing the body content of your speech?
Actually, I don't have a problem writing the content, but the thing is that what I imagine and what I write are completely different animals.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. In my case, Harold, actually, I thought of some subject and I could write like 3-4 points, but after that, I used to stuck like at that point to extend the script.
Right. And that is true. And that's where ideation, research, which we dealt with at the beginning. A few slides back, I said, you go to Google, you do some homework, you try to find out more about the topic that you're writing on. That can feed into this thing. But free writing is something that definitely comes up big time when it comes to actually, putting together the main content of your body.
Okay.
Now, just for the purposes of an exercise, you don't have to write 3 options, but I want you to think of writing one introduction and one conclusion, which might hook your audience. Ideally, so to give you perspective, a great speech or a great article typically has between 20 to 30 different titles that are written and researched before the author or the speaker finalizes one of them. Similarly, for introduction and conclusions, don't settle for the first introduction or conclusion that comes your way. Write multiple options and then figure out which one might be the one that is most interesting for your audience. So don't get stuck on just writing the first introduction or conclusion that comes your way. Change it, chop and change. Think of at least 3 different options. So again, as an exercise, not 15 minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes, just write 2 different options for introductions and 2 different options for conclusion, and try to hook your audience with your introduction based on what we had discussed earlier. I'm going to go back to that slide. Just a couple of minutes. 2 different, again, let it be stream of consciousness, not necessarily deep thought right now. Obviously, when you actually write a speech, you'll have to think deeper. But in the interest of time, we keep it short. You can, punch in, you can copy paste your introductions and conclusions into the text window. And which one you think, yeah, okay. Do you know where leaders come from? If you want to be leader, where do you start? So what makes a leader successful? What is the Pulkit says, do you know why? Do you know that 80% of people are not satisfied with their job? Why? Fantastic. It's a complete hook, right? You're plugging into people's emotions about their jobs, and the fact that jobs are inherently challenging and have at least some level of dissatisfaction. So you straight away create that hook. So Samit, for you, the idea was, what are the top 3 factors that create a successful leader? It may not be like absolutely appropriate, but it's just a thought.
Sure, absolutely.
From a jack to a king. Okay, that's interesting. Most of us are fully mindless. Do you agree? Good one. He looked at himself in the mirror and remembered something, and remembering something screamed. It was last night's shattering story that came back to his mind. Interesting. As a leader, you will fail if the corona pandemic has now been reduced to a bunch of useless statistics for many. Agreed. This statistic became a grim reality for me a couple of times. How many of you know someone who has contracted corona? Okay. So most people die in our civilization on Monday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Do you know why? Fantastic. So this is a scary but absolutely relevant statistic for a lot. Okay, great. So hopefully you've got some ideas about how to use some of these in practice, how to ask the right question. Or of course, as I said, there isn't enough time for us to create a short story, but you get the point here. You can see that some of the ones that are really hooking are either a question or a statistic or a combination of those two, right? A crazy statistic or which has been tied up into a question. Great. So let's move on to the next part. So now coming to actual editing your speech. Now that you've written all the content, how do you edit? How do you organize your speech? Right? How do you edit? In fact, put your speech together. I would like to bring to your attention the 4 different types of edits that are possible and that you need to do on your great speech, to create a great speech. The first type of edit is called the developmental edit, which looks at the high level issues. When I say high level issues, I'm talking about what is the speech talking about from the perspective of your audience. So basically, once you define that my audience is IT professionals with 5 to 10 years of experience. So if there is some content in my speech that is not relevant to that audience, I get rid of it. Now, from the perspective of approach is talking about the tone, the intent, right? So tone might be like, I'm looking for a joyful speech, or I'm looking for a formal speech, but I've written some content that is not in line with the tone that I'm looking for. So I actually look at from the developmental edit perspective. You review your speech once to fix the high level issues from the perspective of audience and approach. The next pass, so you do multiple passes. The second pass is a structural edit. That means that if you've written different sentences which probably belong in the same paragraph or are dealing with the same topic, but they're in different parts of your speech, you need to put them all together. You need to refine the structure so that there is a good flow. So you move from topic to topic smoothly. So that's your structural edit. The third type of edit is the copy edit, where you look at grammar, perspective, style, voice. I'll deal with a couple of these things shortly here so that you understand what I mean when I say, voice and grammar. And then finally you proofread. You check all the commas, you check all the punctuation. And the punctuation is important because when you are delivering a speech, punctuation matters, right? You define that as, you say that, okay, when I have a full stop here, I need to pause perhaps for a second or two. Sometimes you can actually identify a pause in that sense. But taking a look at, if you want to write a great speech, again, you're looking to give a TED talk, then you definitely need to look at these 4 different types of edits. You need to look at it from the developmental edit perspective, from the perspective of structure, from the perspective of a copy edit. Copy means the actual sentence. You read it sentence by sentence, phrase by phrase. And then finally you proofread. You put all the, check all the minor aspects of the speech and put it together. This is probably the most time-consuming aspect of preparing a great speech. Right? You editing your speech, making sure that your speech actually makes sense. If you notice here, I'm not talking about language per se, because that depends on the style that you want to adopt. But irrespective of what kind of language you want to, that means you want to be formal or informal, you want to use jargon, or you want to keep it simple, you need to go through these 4 steps. You need to do 4 passes to have a great speech. Sometimes you can combine obviously some of these and deliver. You can combine your developmental and structural edit together, and then you can do your copy and proof edit. So at least 2 passes if it's a speech that you're just going to deliver on the weekend. But if it's a contest speech, or if it's a really important speech, you're giving a keynote, then you need to fix these issues. Now, some of the aspects that I was talking about there is a question here about whether one must use simple words or use jargon. And often the answer is don't use jargon at all. But I would differ here a little bit and say that when your speech is meant for a general audience, yes, definitely use simple words. But what is jargon to a general audience is actually a clear technical term that is being used by an expert for an expert audience. So if you are delivering a speech, you're an expert, delivering a speech for an expert audience, then by all means, feel free to use technical terms that you believe are commonly known by your expert audience. So it's general audience, use simple words, use jargon in double quotes or technical terms for an expert audience, right? So for example, to give an example, if I want to address, if I'm giving a speech on health issues for a general audience, I might not use the word myocardial infarct because that does not make sense to them, right? But if it's for a bunch of doctors it's a doctor's conference, then that technical term is, the doctor will immediately understand what is the meaning of this term, right? So can use technical terms, but for specific audiences. Here's another important aspect of speech writing: active voice versus passive voice. Now I know, I don't know how many of you remember your grammar, but it is important to understand the use of active voice makes your content much easier to understand and to read. So by and large, try to use active voice in your sentences and not passive. Are there any folks here who are not clear about what is active voice and what is passive voice? I've given 2 examples. So just to explain in very simple terms, active voice is if you break up a sentence into your subject and into your, so its subject here is Tanya, that is the person who is doing the action. The action is winning, and the object is the prize, right? So Tanya won the prize. Easy to understand, right? And short as well, by the way. Passive voice is, so yeah, an active voice sentence is when the subject is at the beginning of the sentence. In a nutshell, obviously the nuances of grammar, there are many, I've chosen simple sentence for a specific purpose, but in very simple black and white terms, if the subject of your sentence appears at the beginning, that is an active voice sentence. So use that model. Use the subject at the beginning of your sentences when you're writing them. In some cases, you may need to use passive sentences, especially when you don't know who the subject is, right? You're delivering a speech, and right now you're not sure. Let's say you're talking about a story where you want to hide let's say there's a crime committed and you want to hide who committed that crime. Then you use passive voice, because then you can say the crime was committed by a stranger, So you use a passive voice just so that the focus is on the crime and not on the who committed that crime. But by and large, use active voice in your sentences. So go through your content, make sure that it is active. And this is where the copy edit comes into play, which I spoke about. Yeah. Here's another aspect that is important: checking for grammar. It's way beyond the scope of this session to delve into the details of grammar. But I've given you a couple of tools here which are freely available. Grammarly is an excellent free tool which you can create an account and use. You just write your speech, you copy and paste it into Grammarly. And by the way, Grammarly is actually way better than the built-in tools available in MS Word or Google Docs. Way better. And I'm talking about even the free version. The free version of Grammarly is way better than what's available in Word. And Grammarly is also available as a plugin into Microsoft Word or Google Docs. So you can use it as a plugin if you need to. But definitely do a grammar and spell check once before, especially if you are talking to an international audience, because often in a local setting, folks may not be overly concerned, or your audience may not worry too much about the grammar. But if you have an international audience, grammar matters a lot. So use these tools to fix the grammar issues that you might be having in your speech. A caveat here is that it's not, Grammarly may catch 20 or 30% of the improvements that a human editor could possibly do, right? So the software tool is nowhere near what a human being can do, an expert human can do in terms of grammar check, but it's still way better than Microsoft Word. So definitely worth taking a look at the grammar and language aspects through Grammarly. Okay. Finally, I want to talk about writing from the heart. If you want to have a speech which has great impact, then the possibility of you having great impact largely depends on some of these factors that I'm going to talk about. So you begin by writing on topics about which you are passionate or on which you're an expert. When you're practicing in Toastmasters, of course, you can choose any kind of topic. But if you are writing a speech where you want to have an impact or for a specific audience, or you want to do it professionally, then write on topics where you're passionate or where you're an expert. The second aspect is the openness and vulnerability. When you share a story where you are involved, where you're authentic in the sense of You write the way you would speak mostly. You are open and you share aspects of your life with your audience. And probably the most important, you're vulnerable. You are willing to expose your flaws and failures. That kind of writing will have a lot more impact than writing which is impersonal. Of course, it again, as I said, kind of depends on the kind of speech you're writing or your audience. If you're delivering a technical speech in your office, that may not be the place for this. But the impact on your audience depends on the impact on yourself. So if you write something that moves you, then it is highly likely that that content will move your audience as well. There is another aspect. The third aspect is the aspect of inspiration and using your emotions. So write when you're inspired, write when you feel a strong emotion. Try to get into a high energy or a high emotional state and then write, because the content that comes out when you're writing in a state of high energy, high inspiration, high emotion is likely to be very different when you're in a la-di-da mode and writing out some content. The content that you write in an emotional state is definitely going to have a much larger impact on the audience than the content that you write when you're not feeling anything strong, neither high nor low, and so on. And finally, you're going to find your voice after a lot of writing. So my suggestion to you in terms of what is meant by a lot of writing, take 10 minutes each day and do free writing and write at least 200 to 300 words without fail every day. Choose a topic, take 10 minutes, do free writing, write on that topic. If you are in a car and you can't actually write, use Google's, you can use Google Voice or Siri. Say what you want to say and record it, and it will convert it into text for you. So there are tools today, the speech to text tools. You can use that to put out the content. So to sum it up, write on topics about which you're an expert or you're passionate about. Be yourself, be open, be vulnerable. Get into a high energy state and write. And find your voice by writing daily, writing your speeches daily, or writing daily in general about what you feel strongly about to help you there. Great. That brings me to the end of our session. There was a lot more that I wanted to cover, but 1.5 hours is actually quite a short period of time, especially when it comes to doing it in a kind of workshop style, which I hope you guys enjoyed. I'd like to open the floor to questions and, let's discuss some of the things that we spoke about now, what you feel about it, and if you have any questions in specifically.
Harold,
yes, sir.
Have you introspected as to why you were first runner-up in the district?
I did actually. I did a fair bit of introspection. And my answer to that question is that I chose a topic which was relevant to everyone. First of all, so it appealed, it had universal appeal, right? So it connected with the audience. I was talking about my work. I was talking about my my challenging experiences at work. In my speech, I actually said that I almost failed at something, and how my boss was a really tough character. He kicked my asteroid belt, so to speak, and took my writing to the next level effectively. And the harrowing experience I had, and finally how that turned out to be, that led me to actually win those 2 certificates that I've got are all thanks to that guy, Jedi. And that's why the speech title was also the Jedi Master. So first of all, it was a topic that was relevant. We all have those tough bosses. We've all dealt with bosses that are tough or challenging. We know this. So this is something that without exception, the audience would identify. We've all been through those harrowing experiences where we're sweating through some project and we're really biting our nails and wondering what on earth is going to happen. That was one aspect. The second aspect was that I tried to keep my speech as simple as possible. And it was a story. I was telling a story. Stories appeal to people. But I was also trying to keep the language very, very simple and conversational. I really wanted to focus on the conversational aspect of the speech more than trying to get into the technicalities and details. And once I actually had a challenge. I was like, this is about technical writing. How do I explain, for example, technical writing without delving into what is the document development life cycle and all of that jazz? And then it struck me that we all buy phones, right? Every one of us has bought a cell phone, and we've opened the box and we've seen some papers, right? And we've, like, for me at least, I throw those papers away, right? So I use that as as an example to show people what I was doing. I said, so I opened the box, I took out the paper, and those papers that you throw away, that's what I was doing. I was writing that. So I was trying to write in a way the speech that would actually connect with the audience so that it was very, very clear in that sense. So, these are the three things that I feel. Of course, there's a delivery aspect, but today our talk is not about delivery. It's about the writing itself. So choosing the right topic with universal appeal to that audience so that everyone could identify and sweat with me, telling a story and keeping it simple, talking conversation, keeping it in a conversational style, trying to dumb down, not in a negative way, but in a way that it would be absolutely crystal clear. I feel that these are the things that matter. Of course, delivery aspects are something else. I hope that answers your question somewhat, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have another question too.
Sure.
Most of the time, I'm speaking to technocrats and techies.
Right.
And to speak from my heart, it's all medical topics, social issues. And so it's always a challenge. So how do we go about it?
So when you say you speak to technocrats, are you speaking in a professional capacity or are you speaking?
No, but even in the Toastmasters,
right.
I'm the only medical person. The rest are all non-medicals.
I would bring to attention the fact that I think at least 10% of our television dramas, at least in the US, are all medical dramas. It's all hospital. And somehow from, even from our perspective, you look at it, today it's a 6-month-long medical drama of which we are all part, right? So health and medicine are such an important aspect of our lives that, again, I feel that it's universal appeal, and I'm sure that in your years in your years in the medical profession, you absolutely must be having some crazy stories to tell. I mean, I for one would love to hear. If I was having a conversation with you, I'd love to hear about some of those, the stories that you don't hear as civilians, or civilians in the, not just in the, the military sense, but also in the sense of non-medical civilians, so to speak. I think that, you probably have a treasure trove of experience to share, even with techies. Like everyone, so many techies are concerned about their health today, and they're, so aware of things that I have no doubt that you could appeal to multiple aspects of techies' interest by using anecdotes from your medical field, but by probably not using, pneumono ultra microscopic silico-volcanoconiosis. I mean, not using these terms, but stuff like that.
Excuse me, Harold.
Yes.
May I? Yeah. So Harold, thank you so much, because I mean, many enlightening things to learn from your session, and you discuss about the concept of free writing, about how this habit is useful to make you a better writer. Right. And see, I mean, I just feel that sometimes, I mean, if we commit ourselves to say, I mean, I'm going to write a few words every day, then every day we might not write stuff of the same quality, and I'm afraid that it can affect our confidence. Let's say, I mean, if we do not write I mean, content of the same high quality every day. So what's your take on this?
Okay, that's a good question you brought out, Taha. My suggestion here would be write every day anyway, right? The first time a person takes steps in any skill, the output is in general going to be of low, poor quality. But without writing, there is no way to improve the quality of your writing. The only way to improve your quality of writing is to write. So now You write for 5 minutes, perhaps edit for 5 minutes. Take a look at your content and see, okay, can I improve it in any way? Are there any minor changes that I can make? So that is definitely, and as professionals, you are a writing professional. At least in part, you are a learning professional, but I'm sure that you use this principle that you write and then you fix, and then you write again and then you fix. And the same thing applies. But the key aspect is to write, to actually form the discipline to write daily.
Right. Absolutely.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Harold, I had a question.
Sure.
Every day you write, it need not be connecting, no?
No. Yes.
Yesterday. It could be a totally different topic also.
Absolutely. Whatever appeals to you at that
moment.
I
write something today. Yeah, it could be actually every day. It could be a new topic, and it could be for another speech. But you can go back to the one like if I wrote something yesterday and I'm writing something today, it need not be with this pertinent to that topic which I did yesterday. I'm thinking of something else today.
Agreed.
Correct.
Yes.
So maybe tomorrow I'll get back to that speech which I've started writing or some thought yesterday. Ideas just keep coming and going, but they need not connect.
You're right. And if you maintain an index, like all great authors, they tend to do that. They write on the spur of the moment and they index and catalog their ideas. And then when they're writing a piece, they use these. They say, oh yeah, that day I had written about this X thing, right? And then they go and they pick that. And then
because I do like that.
So then you are following the footsteps of all the great authors.
Oh yeah. No.
When
I get thoughts and ideas, I just write it down.
It's a valid principle. Yeah. Writing daily on whatever topic appeals to you.
Usha, you see great hope.
Any other questions? Any other thoughts you guys would like to share?
Hi, Harold. Amit here.
Yes, Amit.
Thanks for wonderful sessions. And it is really engaging sessions, and I learned a lot of things regarding the learning.
Most welcome.
My only question is that you said that at the beginning said the use of Grammarly or any other tool. So my question is that if we used to accustom of that Grammarly tool or anything, then we may lost our confidence that whatever if we do not have that tools present, then we may have lost our confidence that whatever we are writing is correctly or not. So how to eliminate that fears that with the help of Grammarly we can sure that this grammatical mistake is corrected, but when these tools are not available, how can we eliminate those mistakes in naturally, means we can say.
So yes, that is a great question, and there are two ways basically. First of all, technology is such today that Grammarly can be available on your phone 24/7. So you can access the Grammarly all throughout, wherever you are, in a manner of speaking. But to address the second part of your question, the way to then fix your grammar or to become confident is to actually learn the rules of grammar, and that's a long process. It's a non-trivial process. Basically, learning grammar takes time. I'm not saying it's difficult, but definitely time consuming. You would need to do a lot of homework. And I believe DTM Usha is doing some courses on grammar and so on. Ma'am, you might want to talk about how one improves one grammar. Just a sentence or two.
Oh, yes. I think the basic Renan Martin is the answer for everything. And Grammarly is good for people who are already in a fairly good level of English. But if your English needs help, I think you need to go to a tutor and learn. Right from the basics, you need to learn. You just can't learn English grammar or any grammar in 1 or 2 days or just to write a speech. For that, Grammarly is good. But if your basics of fundamentals of the language are not very strong, then I think you need to go back to that. You have to learn it. It's a long process. It's not easy.
Agreed.
But I think it's definitely good in the long run.
True.
Yes.
Hope that answers your question, Amit.
Yeah,
Harold, if I may add,
Yes, sir,
recently
go
I had
ahead.
an experience regarding grammar. So,
Right.
before I was planning for the GMAT, I thought that I was very decent at English grammar. But when I started with the GMAT exam, I actually realized that it was not the case. Because the difference between what we speak and what we write is completely different. We might speak something, and it might sound right, but it might not be grammatically correct. It is just
Yes.
because we are accustomed to listening to the language that way, or we are translating the language in our head. So
Agreed.
that is why
Agreed.
these tools are really good,
Important.
because
Yeah.
they follow the rules to the T, that
True.
rules that we might not even know of. So
True.
I agree to your point that we should use those tools for at least a fact check.
True.
Hi,
Thanks,
Harold.
Govinda. Yes, Amrita, go ahead.
Yeah, one question. I usually tend to write when I read something, and then most of the time I get this thought that my writing is actually being provoked by the whatever I have read, and so at times I tend to feel that is it just a copy of what I'm writing while I trying to add my version to it. I wanted to understand if this is one of the way to write.
Yes. So my take on that is that if you're writing professionally, then you might need to be careful that there's no plagiarism. So plagiarism means that there is a direct copy of any
Copy.
content from
Yes.
any, yeah. But to be inspired by something, I believe is human. So, if you think about it, now let me wax eloquent on the philosophical aspect. I think it was Newton who said that if I've seen further, it is because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. Now, the shoulders of giants are what we are all standing on. Everything at some level is derivative. So it is perfectly fine to read on a topic, to be inspired by it, and then to write on that topic. But probably by adding your own flavor. Remember, I said be yourself. So in your article, you can actually say, let's say you read Great Expectations, Charles Dickens, and then the story moved you, right? Or you read One Night at the Call Center, or whatever book you read, or what some article you read, or some speech you saw, and that moved you. You can certainly refer to it, and then you can talk about not just the aspects of that which moved you, but you can also talk about what you're feeling and why it did, right? So if you add yourself into the mix in your writing, I believe that is ultimately the most that anyone can be originally in that sense.
Okay, sure, that helps. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts, questions? We are already 10 minutes over. I'm so sorry.
One more question from me. So,
Yes, Amit.
is there any particular time you will say that for writing the free writing or everyday writing? So, ideally it should be morning time, but is there any specific timing?
So my suggestion like my morning routine is that I wake up, I meditate, and then immediately I write. I write something, whatever it is. So for me, there is what should I say, that habit. There's something called linking or chaining of habits. You can chain it. So for example, you can set it up as that as soon as I finish my tea, I will write 200 words or I'll do free writing. Uh, the reason morning is good, unless those mornings when you're tense or anxious about something, is that you have a lot more energy, and therefore the writing and your cognitive faculties are at their brightest. So your writing is likely to be sparkling and much more inspired in the morning than in the night when you're tired, you're anxious, your family is making demands on your time, and at that time you have to push them away and say, oh, now I need to write. So in my opinion, the energy levels matter. So energy levels being high in the morning means that writing in the morning probably makes sense. But your mileage might vary because some folks are night birds. For them, they're high energy in the night, which is perfectly fine. Ultimately, doing it is more important than using time. Like I've noticed that there are some people who have a challenge where they say that, okay, I don't have the time. So simply doing it at any time is way better than not doing it.
Yeah.
Hope that answers your question.
You would like to say, means for the new ones, so any book that help to improve the writing skill, any book you would like to suggest?
There are a lot of books. There is a lot of material on this field. If you don't mind, I'll share that through an email with you guys.
Yes, yes.
I'll share some resources with you as
Yeah,
an
yeah.
email.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay. So thanks everyone for this opportunity. I'm happy to have shared whatever I could in the art of writing. I hope it was useful. I hope you felt some benefit out of this. Definitely there are, as I said, this is a series of 5 sessions. So there are many better, greater sessions in the future at the same time every week. So all the best to everyone. Happy writing, happy speech delivering, and over to our Master of Ceremonies, Sachin.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you for doing such an interesting, insightful session in a very interesting way. Thanks a lot. I think for the benefit of the larger audience, I just wanted to announce that we will again have the next session at the same time next Sunday, which is around how to be vocally expressive by DTM Usha. I hope all of you will take this opportunity, make full use of the opportunity to learn more about speech delivery. So thanks a lot for joining today and hope to see you next week. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Harold.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
I just did a speech yesterday
I see.
at a club in Bangalore, BTM
Oh,
Toastmasters.
okay. I see.
I did this speech on life skills, and this I have been writing off and on.
Okay.
And then I made it into one speech, and I delivered it yesterday.
Awesome. Do you have a recording? You should share it there.
Yeah, I have. I'm planning to redo it in our club.
Okay, awesome.
Because it was really well appreciated, and when you said, write when you get the ideas, right? It worked with me.
Right.
Such
That is
things,
probably the best time to write, right?
Yes,
when you're
yes.
inspired, yeah. When you're moved.
Yeah, that's very true.
In fact, there are some authors who have written entire books. If I'm not mistaken, even Nietzsche wrote Thus Spake Zarathustra. It's like a tome, and it's one of those, like, in the field of philosophy. I don't know whether you guys have heard about Nietzsche, but he wrote it in a span of 6 days. He said he was in some crazy creative format. The inspiration was, almost like at a crazy level, and he put out the whole book in 6 days.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So it's what we're doing is a minor version of the same thing. Like when you're inspired, you write.
Yeah. I think in Toastmasters, whenever we write, it's always the next speech. That objectives are always there in your mind. Yes. So if I have to think about a script, whenever I think about the objectives, and if this matches that, then I start writing.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's what it is. But very well done. Thank you, Harold.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thanks for attending. Yeah.
Harold, one just last question. Maybe it is too late. Maybe
no, go ahead.
Everybody. So when you write this free form writing, which you need to catalog or tag, so that later on, when you want to call back something for your speech you are working on or project you are working on, how do you catalog actually tag it?
So what I do is I just create a TOC, table of contents, in Microsoft Word. I write in MS Word, and each page is a separate topic. And then whatever title I've written there, which is a placeholder, I've kept it there. And then when I'm looking for it, you Control F and you find it.
No, but beyond a certain point, so what file gets increasing, and the moment what files like such content intensive file goes beyond 2 MB, which is like around 500, 600 pages, like you're lost, right? So you cannot find that. So then you create another file.
Yeah. So there are different files also. Yeah. So,
for different genre.
Yeah. Okay. So, but basically using an editor or using a text, there are some journaling tools also, which are available where one can capture all of this. As I said, for me, it is MS Word. I just prefer to put it up into MS Word, and based on each category.
Me also, for me, Word works better.
Yeah. And I just try to do it as simple as possible without screenshot or anything. In that sense, MS Word seems to work pretty okay.
Oh, sure.
Good. Very well done. Thank you, Harold.
Great. Thanks
for
everyone.
the wonderful session.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Harold.
Bye. Excellent session.
Thanks. Thank you, Amit.
Thanks, Harold. Thanks.
Thank you, Vrinda, ma'am. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Harold.
Thank you, Samit.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
I think the recording needs to be stopped right now.
Yeah, Sandeep, can you please do